All right. Was that the 2 o'clock bell?
That was.
All right. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Steinocher, President and CEO of the St. Petersburg Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to let more people assemble. Right now, we have about 83 people on the call. We were expecting about 118, so I'm sure there's some folks still working their computer setups. So if you don't mind, I will keep talking, but we're not going to get started just yet. But we are on what's called a Zoom webinar platform. Most of us have practiced a lot on Zoom right now. This is a webinar feature, so it has a few other different whistles and bells. And you may not see yourself, but we know we can track you. You can let us know that you're needing a question by raising your hand. If you can find where it says for you to raise your hand, we'll work on that a little bit further, but you might want to start playing around with that. I see I've got about 78 people that might have questions, so we're going to try to get your questions done as well. We're going to spend a little bit of time today just kind of getting back together, and we're going to talk specifically about one of our programs, one of the programs in place, but we'll have a lot of information about others as well, as well as being most interested in what you all are finding and needing information from. So we're about to get started, but I just want to see if I can get just a few more folks. I'm about 13 folks short, so we're going to give them about 1 more minute and we'll get started. I think I'm doing well so far. How about you guys? Great. Thank you for that.
You're doing great.
All right. All right. We're almost at that number. Hey, Courtney, did we talk about how we can put the poll up now, or are we going to wait on that?
You can do it anytime you like.
Okay, so while we are getting started, Courtney is going to put up a poll for you all to consider taking for us, because one of the interactive features of the webinar is just to get your inputs, because we want to really know what is on your mind, or at least where your level of craziness is, and when we get into COVID-19 issues. So Courtney, I don't know if you can share that with folks.
Yep, it's live right now.
Okay, cool. All right, so we ask you to take the poll and to give us some feedback. I'm not sure I see it, but I'm sure others do. All right, we're going to get started live now, guys. Again, welcome. If you just joined us, I'm Chris Steinocher, President and CEO of the St. Petersburg Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for reconvening in these awkward times, but with some very special folks. We are, as a chamber or a community, as St. Pete, we are one of the best communities on the planet. We intend to stick together throughout this. This was like a meteorite hitting our Earth. None of us expected it. None of us planned for it. We're all in the same seat today, wondering how it's going to affect our businesses. Some of our businesses have impacted tremendously. They are closed today and they may never reopen. Others are still trying to determine that, and others are going full gun right now trying to support the healthcare workers and the cures and the other efforts and feeding people and getting groceries to folks. So there are a lot of different kind of members I have right now. But what I thought we'd do is make sure that we get everybody together and do some things. But what I wanted to share with you is just a few of the things we're going to be doing. We are going to have about an hour conversation. I'm going to give you a few minutes about just what the chamber benefits are right now for your business. So what are we doing that can help you get online again or get you that information? We'll share a little bit about what we know from our county, city, and state, which has just issued a new stay-at-home order for us as well. And then we're going to get into our panelists giving us some details. And then we're going to get to your Q&A. So we have the opportunity to answer your questions as well. So many of you might say, well, then Chris, just stop talking and start getting to it. And so I will. But thank you for reminding me to keep going. So we have been, for all of our members, the Chamber of Commerce physical building is actually closed, as most of us are practicing staying safe at home. We are operating, though. All of our employees are currently operating in all of our functions. For you, although for our members, we have reached out to every member. We have about 1,300, almost 1,400 members. Ideally, you have received a call from us. You've provided us input and given us some data back to us. We've made over 1,600 calls to our members to get that information. While we've reached over half of them physically with our information emails as well, we're trying to get to each one of you because we're logging in your information. The way we log in your information, it helps us because it helps create the benefits that the government's trying to create for you. So when we're trying to reach you, we are trying to be a little nosy because we want to know how our businesses are doing, but we're also using that data to inform our government on what kind of resources or what kind of other policies you would all need to continue to operate successfully in your businesses. From that information, we've learned about 35% of our businesses have been majorly impacted. Ideally, absolutely, our hospitality industry. We have about 140 hospitality members that are currently closed down completely or just doing to-go orders. So they have been majorly impacted. Our retail and bar industries are the 4 industries that have been most hit by this. We understand that. We are starting to feel the impacts now in our other industries as well, and we'll discuss that a little bit as well. But so we've gotten data from you all, and thank you. So we have a good amount of core data that we're sharing with the authorities and others to help us with that. We're going to continue to do that. We also have a landing page called stpete.com/prepare that will help you with all the other information, because we are getting a ton of data and information, and there's a lot of it. We mimic that site on stpetegreenhouse.com/prepare as well. So you have 2 different resources that are mimicking the data to make sure that everybody gets the same information. If you haven't been there yet, please just check in with that. There might be other additional resources you weren't aware of, especially from our chamber and our other businesses. So many of our businesses right now are offering you all support and the kind of consultations, advice, and other efforts that you're looking for. So please get our website for that information. We're also offering a lot of free promotion for those members who are still open. So if you're a member who still wants to tell the St. Pete and Tampa Bay community that you're open, we're offering free ads on all of our platforms, on our website and our newsletter. So we have those available to you as well. And please take us up on that because we're getting a lot of information out and a lot of hits in. Your business can be seen free of charge. We're also, if you are hiring right now because people are laying off, if your business is one of those that is actually hiring, we're offering free placements on our website called becomestpete.com, which is a partnership with us and the EDC. Now, Become St. Pete used to be an external device we used to get leads from outside of the city, outside of the region, from the rest of the country. So that now to create job opportunities. So if you go to it, you can see there are jobs being created right now. There are companies in our community being hired. So if you have employees that need to be diverted into other jobs, it could be a good resource. Or if you're a company that needs to hire, this is all free of charge based on the Chamber and the EDC helping where we can. We're also creating free landing pages and restaurant menus for anybody who still doesn't have a to-go order. One of our members, Cindy Takeout Button, has allowed us to use her services. So we're getting all of our restaurants online, as well as providing other landing pages and other support of our members on our site. So you will find out everything you need on our site. I'll stop rambling in a second, but I just want to make sure I get these done. If your business, and you're going to hear about policies that are in place or ideas, if your business is being impacted by a policy and you're like, man, if they just tweaked it a little bit, I could do something pretty special. We have Matt Letlier on our phone. He's our advocacy manager. That's what he's dealing with. He's working with the governor's office and the county and the city to make sure your business voice is heard so that we can tweak any regulations. And he's done a great job of keeping a lot of our businesses open based on the impact we have in that office. So I want to mention that. And the final piece is we know that you can run your business now from home. We've learned that, but we still understand that the data point we really learned from all of our members that we called is we still are so overwhelmed with all this information is we need people to talk to. We need good advice. We need more than one set of advice. And make sure that we're seeing everything because there are a lot of applications we are being asked to fill out right now. There's a lot of people asking us for resources and ways to donate and where to go and what to do. So it's very complicated. But what we've learned from all this is you all need each other as much as you need a Chamber of Commerce. So today kicks off our town hall, which brings everybody in the same room. And right now I've got 115 of our members in this room. What we're going to do going after this is start splitting you into smaller groups so that you can actually do some work together. Because there are some of you in the hospitality industry, and Ryan's on their call today. We'll talk to you about how they're working together on issues. And so what we thought is if we can get our members in smaller groups to support each other and then put in the same room some good lawyers, accountants, and bankers, that would help you all. So if you don't get everything you need out of today's call, please know that we're going to be doing this every week now, but we're going to getting into smaller groups as well so that your personal business, if you need an application filled out and you need help, that's what we want to get drilled down to. And that's going to be our goal going forward. So that's my part of it. What I would love to do now, Courtney, did I miss anything on the setup before we get started?
No, I think we're okay.
Okay, so thank you all. So, and just a reminder for everybody, if you can keep yourselves on mute if possible, raise your hand if you need so. Courtney and Renell are helping us facilitate this. You should also have a survey in front of you now of what level of impact has this created for your business. I hope you put something out on that, and we'll continue to monitor our chat line as well in case you have any questions. But let me bring in our group now. To continue this conversation. I'm very blessed as a chamber president to have so many resources to call upon, and there's so many more we could have called upon. So I'm not playing favorites by bringing these folks in. They were the most available to me. I'm going to bring in others into the room as the days go on. We'll have other lawyers, other bankers, other accountants with us. I mean, if you're one of those and you want to hop on with us, please let me know. And we've got plenty of time and energy to plug everybody in. But thank you for those who have joined us. I want to I'll first go through them all. I want to introduce Ryan Griffin. Ryan is actually our chair of the Chamber of Commerce this year. He's a lawyer at Johnson Pope, Bokor, Ruppel, and Burns. He also has a lot of small businesses in town in the hospitality industry. He'll be kicking it off. He'll be helping us understand the lay of the land from what he sees as far as the resources available to us. We also have another lawyer on board here is Will Conroy, also with Johnson Pope, Bokor, Ruppel, and Burns. He's going to help us understand the care piece of this and the payroll protection programs. So we're going to have a little bit of information for us on that. Then additionally, in our room right now to discuss it, we have some bankers. You want to stay close to the money, guys. You want to keep conversations going with your bankers. We have Marcus Greene, also a board member. He's with Truist Bank, formerly BB&T. He is also a small business owner as well with Prano Car Wash. So what Marcus can bring to us is he's having to do these same issues. He's having to understand how to furlough, how to make payroll work in a small business while being on the other end of it, helping businesses stay in business. So he'll be a good resource for our questions, as well as Tim Coop, who's the president and CEO of Hancock Whitney for our west coast of Florida here, a board member who is also going to help us understand the best way for you all to get quickly to the money. Because what part of this is going to be is he who hesitates may be lost. So I want everybody to get in line. You're going to hear Ryan mention other options, and our city is going to be putting out its Fighting Chance. Our Arts Alliance is putting out one for our artists. Everybody's going to be rushing towards the money. What we want our members to be is the most prepared and the first in line, because we want our resources as quick as possible. So Ryan, I would love for you to kick it off. I want to stop rambling. You take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone, and thanks for attending. I think as Chris mentioned on the outset, we're going to be able to get through this as a community and work together. So hopefully opportunities like this can serve to do that. I just wanted to mention, I am a lawyer at Johnson Pope. I represent a lot of small businesses, so obviously there's a lot of contract issues in play. Those are things I'm helping a lot of our members with, and we have additional resources at the chamber to help you with those things, might be with contracts, leases, etc. But as a small business owner, I own a couple small businesses in town, Trophy Fish, which is a restaurant, Saki 23, which is a restaurant, Mandarin Hyde, which is a cocktail bar, and Mandarin Heights over in Tampa with a bodega. And again, those have been severely affected by recent orders and the COVID-19 crisis that we have on. I just wanted to kind of reiterate some options that you have to you beyond the CARES Act. I think this call is going to focus on the CARES Act. I did want to relay, though, there's some other things out there. If you haven't researched them, they are there. One is the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That roughly is a 3.75% loan for a term up to 30 years. It is also available for nonprofits at 2.75% interest rate loan for up to 30 years. And there's a portion of that loan, I think it's $10,000, which can act as a grant and not need to be repaid. Again, there's another one which you guys have probably seen, which is the Florida Emergency Bridge Loan. That's through the state. That is up to $50,000. It's a zero interest percent loan, good for 12 months. However, at 12 months, it goes to 12%. So again, if you were to use those loans, I highly recommend that those are used for a bridge loan to get you to one of these other loans or one of these other grants to get you through. Information on that can be found on Pinellas County Economic Development website. I think they have a really good page that identifies these. That is www.pced, that's pced.org/page/disaster. And I will also text that on the chat as soon as I'm done talking, so you can go and see information on both of those options. As Chris mentioned, there also is a third option that I'm pursuing for my hospitality companies and small businesses. That is, St. Petersburg's city is putting out the Fighting Chance initiative. That will have information launched tomorrow, April 2nd. And that information essentially is a grant, and that grant will be for 4 specific industries, the industries that have been hurt the most as of today. And those are retail, service, restaurant, and bar. That's $6.8 million that the city is putting towards this. That money is coming from the FEMA reimbursement funds that they got from Hurricane Irma. That money will be $5,000 for small businesses, okay? All businesses in those industries that are affected. It's on a first come, first served basis, and they're launching it tomorrow, but the applications will be posted on April 9th. So it gives you a week to get your information together and information about how to apply for that grant. They also will be putting out $500 to individuals within those affected industries that have either lost their jobs or had their jobs and payroll reduced. And the idea of the city is that this would be a first fund, and there would be a second fund. And that second fund might be with additional public funds as well as private funds. And we're doing some fundraising on that. Fourthly, as we know, we have bankers on this call, and they have pointed out to say that there's a lot of things that bankers are doing for their members. So I would definitely check with your bank, find out what's available to your bank. The banks are not only helping out with CARES Act and some of these loans, but they also have options and relief options available. So I highly advise that you call your banker, reach out to them, see what's out there, that what might be able to assist you. And lastly, I just wanted to touch base. I know we're going to talk about the CARES Act. I personally have had to lay off 70 employees in the last week or so. And I'm hoping that the CARES Act, and it will give me the ability to hire those employees back under the payroll protection. So I'm really excited about the call today and this information. And with that, I want to turn it over to Will Conroy. Will is also one of my partners, but has been looking into the CARES Act and can get down into the details.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I sympathize with everybody on this call. As we all know, looking at that poll, I'm hopeful that not everybody is in the adverse category with no revenue, but I'm interested to see the results, because I think they will be pretty drastic. But you know, Chris hit on 2 things at the beginning, which I think are really overarching themes for the applicability of the CARES Act to our businesses. One is at $350 billion in the aggregate, that seems like a staggering number. However, that for a private payroll subsidy for the entire United States, that number is not going to last. You know, that those dollars are going to run out. So there's going to be winners and losers. There's going to be people who get approved, people who don't. Get to your banker as soon as you can. We are so very fortunate to have both Marcus and Tim here. Both individually and their organizations represent the essence of what it means to be a community bank. And in times like this, we need our community banks, which are bankers who know us as individual business owners, who can help, who understand our situations. So my first piece of advice that I've given to the hundreds of personal clients I've talked to in the last week, and I'll give to all you, is call your banker immediately, get in their queue, get on their list, tell them what's going on, and have them be your advocate through this process. So that would be my number one piece of advice. And then my second piece of advice is continue to stay informed. The website I've been using most frequently is treasury.gov. which is the Treasury's webpage. And Ryan, if you're going to send out a text, will you just send out a text to that too?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So on yesterday, and Tim and Marcus can speak to this a little bit, there was guidelines and regulations issued for the first time by the Treasury alongside the actual application. The actual application is pretty bare bones. Like Ryan, I'm a small business owner, and so I've actually already filled it out. It basically looks something like this, like a normal, bank application. You basically need to certify your payroll information for 2019. So get your payroll records together, get your articles of organization, your ownership structure, and really that plus a calculator is all you're going to need to preliminarily complete that application. But I can't stress enough, there's going to be, this money is going to run out. So if you're thinking about waiting and seeing how things go, don't. Call your banker, get the application off of treasury.gov, and get in the queue. I know we're going to have time to talk about specifics later, but I'll throw it over to one of the bankers for their introduction as well.
Tim, go ahead. You're on mute.
Thanks, everyone. I'm kind of a novice with Zoom here, so appreciate your patience. Yeah, my name's Tim Coop. I'm the regional president for Hancock Whitney Bank. I live right here in St. Petersburg. As you can see, I'm working from home today. I've been splitting some time between home and the office. We're definitely observing social distancing measures at the office. We do expect the Paycheck Protection Program to go live on Friday. There's still a lot to be firmed up about it, candidly, and the SBA is issuing additional guidance each day. I will reference this application. I would encourage you to fill this out on a computer, not by hand. Right now, these things are being processed or will be processed initially by the banks by hand and with human input. That will probably change. At least that's the case with our organization. But take the time to fill these out on a computer, not by hand, so there's no difficulty in reading your writing. We do expect that there'll be a rush for the money. We are hopeful. We don't have this in any type of guarantee based on some dialogue we've had with politicians and regulators. I don't think anybody's ruled out the possibility of a second round of this. So we'll have to see where that goes. And just good to be here with everybody today. And we've offered for our clients 3 months of payment deferrals. You can get information on our website, hancockwhitney.com, if you're a client, and on the consumer and residential side, if you're a commercial banking customer, hopefully your banker's already been in touch with you and gone through what the deferral options are. So I'm sure a lot of questions will come up. I'll turn it over to Marcus Greene from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And nice to see that playoff beard you're growing for the COVID playoffs.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. So let me just start with reiterating a couple of comments made by both Ryan, Will, and Tim, and that is reach out to your banker if you have not heard from them and touch base. Make sure to ask what their institution has available to assist you in addition to what we see coming from our friends in Washington. So there may be programs, I know we have them here at Truist, as Tim mentioned, they do at Hancock Whitney, to provide payment deferrals and other assistance for businesses that are impacted. And almost all of our businesses are impacted. So reach out, touch base with your banker. For example, here at Truist, we stood up a new website link this morning to allow our customers to register that they're interested in the Payroll Protection Loan Program. And that will then enable us to send them email updates because things are changing by the minute, by the hour, by the day as to exactly how the program is supposed to work. So, but Tim mentioned, and so did Ryan and Will, the first day that you can apply is Friday, April the 3rd. So not today, not tomorrow, but Friday. So be ready to do what you need to do by Friday. To be ready, complete your homework assignment, which is collecting your payroll data for the last 12 months. And that payroll data would include information that the SBA's put out to include what we are referring to as the complete payroll burden. So your payroll cost, your taxes, your employer paid benefits, your employer paid contributions to retirement plans, the administrative cost associated with providing your payroll if you're using a third-party service, all of that for a 12-month period going from February 15th of this year back to February 15th of last year. That's the time period the SBA has suggested that you collect information for. That information will be used to determine how much of a loan you could apply for. That's the first step in the process. Gather your information. I believe it will be required that you provide that detailed backup information when you make application. So get it ready. The other thing I would say relative to small business owners, as Chris mentioned, we do own one. It's been in business here in St. Petersburg since 1958. Last week, because of the decline in our business, we furloughed approximately 50% of our employees. Very unfortunate. We provided them information on how to apply for economic assistance from the state of Florida. We are continuing to pay the employer portion of their benefits, and we're hoping to bring them back to work as quickly as we can. So we're all doing, and the last comment I would make before I turn it over to the next speaker, and that is, please be focused on the things you need to be doing for your business, and don't wait around for the check to come from the government. Do what you need to do today, not a month from now. So govern yourself accordingly, understanding there may be support available, but everyone has said, and I will reiterate, this funding, $349 billion, will go rather quickly. And we have no assurances that additional funding will be provided. We will have to wait and see. So with that, I will turn it over to Courtney, who's next on our list.
I got it. Thank you, Marcus. And you went right into the details, and we're already getting like the real detailed questions about what you mentioned. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just dive in a little bit more on the CARES Act right now, because I'm seeing a lot of questions about it as far as the dates and just some other elements of that. So Will, may I put you on the spot and just walk people through a little bit of the first basics of it, and then we'll let Courtney help us with the specific questions I'm seeing online right now.
Sure. Yeah, and actually this Zoom webinar chat feature is fantastic. I've never used this before, but I saw Councilmember Rice just ask a question. I was able to respond. So feel free if to post questions, and if we can get to them, we'll get to them. So Marcus identified the first thing: gather payroll records. Have a conversation with your payroll processing company, or if you do it in-house, pull up that file. You need to get the ownership information for your entity squared away. And then once you have that, you take the T12, the trailing 12-month payroll numbers, and you take the average of those 12 months for full-time employees for dollars be below 100,000. So if you have a high earner who's at 150,000, for the purpose of this calculation, you can only use the first 2/3 of that compensation, which is 100,000. You take that number, you divide it by 12, and then multiply it by 2.5. That is your maximum eligibility. And so one of the important distinctions, and the panelists, we were talking about this before the call, there is your eligibility criteria, and then there's the usage of funds. So, and that creates confusion for people. So your eligibility criteria is the 2.5 times the average of your previous 12 months payroll expenses. And like Marcus said, payroll expenses or payroll costs is broadly defined. So you can then apply, if your average is $100,000, you can apply for a maximum loan of $250,000. Then once you get that loan, over the next 8 weeks, you can use it for operating expenses, which is broader than just employment or employee cost. So you can use it for rent, you can use it for debt service on credit facilities that were previously in place, lease payments. One of the caveats we got yesterday from the Treasury is that when you talk about the forgiveness of this loan, so there's a presumption that 100% of the loan is forgiven. Again, in my $250,000 example, it's presumed that $250,000 is the maximum forgiveness you can have. If you use that $250,000, if you use greater than 25% of that for non-payroll costs, then your forgiveness factor will be reduced. If you qualify for the $250,000 and that was based on having 10 full-time employees, and then on June 30th, when you can apply to Tim or Marcus for forgiveness of that loan, if you have 0 full-time employees, that loan is not going to be forgiven. Okay, and so that's the important distinction between eligibility, use of proceeds, and then forgiveness.
Well done. Yeah, well done.
Or we can come back to that. Or?
Yeah, I think that was a great start to it. So I really would love to, if and does anyone else have on the panel, before I get to the specific questions, have anything else that they wanted to add to Will's comments before we get to the specifics? Tim?
More of a clarification. I know there's been discussion about whether you look at trailing 12 months payroll for the calculation of the loan amount, or 2019 payroll. Your understanding it's trailing 12 months. Is that right, Will?
Well, so Tim actually brings up a great point. The legislation says trailing 12. The regulations that were issued yesterday indicate the 2019. One of the congressional folks that I talked to, who was involved in some of the lobbying around the legislation, believed that the regulation issued yesterday was mistaken when it said 2019. So
Okay.
the idea, according to this lobbyist, is that the legislation aimed to capture the snapshot of the business in the 12 months immediately prior to when this catastrophe hit us, which would be, the February prior. So
Hey, Will.
Yeah.
Chris, Tim, this is Marcus. So again, it is our understanding that the time period which is most applicable to what they're looking for is February the 15th of 2019 to February the 14th of 2020, that 12-month period. However, one of the other requirements in the details is that along with your payroll records by employee, so that they can make sure that you're not including anyone who earned more than $100,000 a year. You can include up to the first 100, but if they make more than that, you can't include that part. So they want to be able to verify. They're also asking you to provide copies of your IRS Form 941, which is a quarterly filing attesting to how many employees you have on your active payroll. Those forms are only filed quarterly, therefore there wouldn't be one available for February the 15th. So it's a bit of apples and oranges as to the time period for the data that you need to supply to verify how much of a loan you can apply for. So it is our understanding payroll records February 15th to February 15th. Employee headcount IRS Form 941 would be for the 4 quarters ending December 31, 2019. That's the level of detail you need to collect and have available to go along with your application.
Thank you, Marcus. It sounds like, there is a lot of detail work that can be done in the next 2 days. I'm getting some more questions, and I see our group is answering them as quick as possible. I don't know if there was one question from Dr. Cole about, can the PPP loan be used to pay off debt? What would our folks say about that?
One of the allowed expenses, so after you determine how much you can apply for based on your payroll history, and you apply for the loan and you are granted the loan, you have a 60-day period following the date you are granted the loan. I take that to mean the day the money is put in your bank account, to spend the money on payroll burden, utilities, rent, and loan interest payments for all loans that were in place by no later than February the 15th of 2020. So yes, you can use the money to make loan payments, but only interest as far as how much can be forgiven.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Marcus. Another question from Amy Ladden is like, would a single member LLC in the service industry receive relief through the CARES Act, or is the Fighting Chance Initiative a better avenue? And I'll start off by saying, Amy, I think you need to apply for everything you can, first of all, is number one, because the city's money of the Fighting Chance will not conflict you out of any of the other government programs. So I would keep all buckets open to receive resources. The Fighting Chance Initiative is a completely different effort. We'll find out more details tomorrow, and you'll have a week to apply for that one. So next week we'll have more details on how to apply for that. But I would say you have the opportunity to do all of those or both.
Chris, that's a good point. The other thing I would add, though, is that there are several SBA programs, and not just the payroll protection program. There are going to be caveats that say that if you are a participant in the payroll protection program and also the other SBA disaster program that's already out there, that you can't claim the same expenses for both programs, one or the other.
That's an important part, so that the source you get them from will have those kind of rules again, making sure that, because that bridge loan Marcus mentioned does conflict with the new program they put in place. So please, if you're taking out those SBA efforts, please talk to your lawyers and bankers to make sure that you can apply the expenses you thought you were going to apply to it. All right, let's see, I'm going to keep tracking if you don't mind. Let's see, I don't know if everybody's questions have been answered, Courtney, because it's kind of a flurry. Is there a single question that anybody can post again, or do we have any other questions that haven't been answered? Because I see our panel quickly answering a lot of these questions before I can get them out there.
Yeah, I think some in the Q&A box, if you want to look in there.
Chris, let me just say one thing too, and this is a policy comment. But for those of us who lived through the Great Recession and dealt with this, I think it's important. Bankers got a horrible rap during 2008 and 2009 with TARP and the bailout of the banks. I was very relieved to see Congress make the decision that the banks were going to be the front lines of this program, because I said it before and I can't say it again. I mean, the strength and the vitality of our community banks and our big regional and national banks is so important for our businesses. And so I'm sort of viewing this as a redemption tour, hopefully, for our bankers to really help all the small businesses after they took some unnecessary heat during the Great Recession. So, I can't stress it enough. Call your banker as soon as possible.
Who would ever thought we'd throw some love to the bankers? Wow. This is a weird time we're in right now. I'm just kidding about our banker friends. Heather Sutter has a question. Will or Ryan, you can answer. Could you go through the forgiveness guidelines again?
Okay. So during the 60-day period after you receive the loan proceeds under the Payroll Protection Act program, you are allowed to spend those proceeds on allowed expenses. Your full payroll burden for that 60-day period, as well as utilities, rent, loan interest payments. So let's say, for example, you were, based on your payroll history, allowed to apply for a $100,000 loan. That's 2.5 months of your average payroll. And during the 60-day period, you use $100,000 to pay the payroll, the utilities, the rent, and the loan payments. You would theoretically be eligible for a 100% forgiveness, except for the interest due on the loan. The interest is not forgivable under any circumstances. If you, let's say you only use $80,000 for those allowed expenses during the 60 days. The $20,000 you don't use would be converted into a loan that you would have to pay back, and the maximum payback period, as we now understand it, as of yesterday, is 2 years. Originally, it was said that it would be 10 years. So again, the program continues to change until we actually have the rules issued by the SBA, which they're going to have to issue those soon because we will be taking applications. All the banks would be authorized to take applications starting on Friday.
Great. So thank you, Marcus. And I'm going to keep moving quickly. So if you have clarifications, need clarifications, please post them for me. But let me get a couple quick ones out. Kelly asks, do independent contractors count as employees? Who wants to take that one?
I'll take it.
1099s are included.
Yes.
All right, cool. Got it. Kelly, I hope that helps you. Michelle Tolan asks a really important question. This is quite overwhelming. There's so much going on. If she doesn't have a banker or a lawyer to help her or a CPA, Michelle, what I would tell you is we have your name now. Our greenhouse in our chamber is set up for you. We want to help you. We will put you in with a banker and a lawyer and an accountant, make sure that you get what you need out of this. So we have our greenhouse staff on the line. Kim Vogel is taking down names of folks who need direct assistance. We have a lot of lawyers and bankers and others who want to help you. So we will do the matchmaking for you if you don't mind. So we'll get that done for you. Okay, another question, and because we have a lot of them, is from Andy Charles. He's a solopreneur. He says the PPP program is theoretically available to solopreneurs, but the rule defines payroll as a net income rather than gross. So that pretty much eliminates him and many solopreneurs. Is there any alternatives, or is he missing anything in the interpretation? Come on, guys. I know you got an answer to that. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm not sure why he would be excluded. Again, his payroll costs are whether it's net or gross. I mean, it's north of zero. I'm assuming. So I still think that he should apply. Now he may be a candidate for the economic disaster program through the SBA. Ryan mentioned this at the onset, where the first step in that program is actually a $10,000 grant that is not, you're not required to repay that whether you get approved or not. So I would encourage, the PPP may not be the right fit. I think it was for Andy, may not be the right fit for Andy, but there could be an alternative, and he may want to look at the economic disaster program.
Great. Thank
Hey,
you, Will.
Chris, I would just add to that. So that economic disaster recovery program is direct to the SBA. The banks are not involved in that at all. Just to
Good point. Hey,
clarify.
Tim, one of the questions we had was, are all SBA banks created equal? I mean, like if I work with one, will they get me in the quicker than others? Because there's some of that going on. So can you clarify that for us?
That's a really good question, Chris. So here, and Tim may have a different perspective on it, but I doubt it. There are different levels of SBA participating banks. You can be a certified participant. You can be a preferred lender. Different banks have different levels of involvement with the SBA prior to this current program. We don't know yet how the funding will be allocated and whether or not one bank is more efficient at helping their customers than another. That's really hard to determine when we don't yet know the rules of once we receive your application and all of the appropriate supporting information, what we're supposed to do with it. Okay. We don't know yet, okay?
But getting everybody prepared is what we're going to do. So I get that. I do have a question from Beth. She says, what do you do if your banker goes missing, MIA for 5 days? I'm not going to say which brand she mentioned, but I would say, Beth, keep calling. And if not, there's a lot of other bankers in town. But just because I really do believe that's the first.
If it's someone that works for me, call me.
Same here. And by the way, here's the other recommendation I would make, Chris. If their banker works for a bank that has branch locations, at least here at Truist, and I know it's probably the same at Hancock Whitney, our branches are open through drive-through services and appointments in our lobby. So if you can't get your banker to call you back, go down to the bank and say hello and tell them you need someone to call you.
Yep. Thank you. And I think that most of our banks are running those same kind of shifts. So thank you. I've got another one from one of our printers in town. He says, we're keeping our staff at 75% of payroll levels, even though they are not working, to make sure they're qualified to make sure they're qualified for the 100% loan forgiveness of the PPE strategy. Is that a correct strategy? So Al wants to know, I've got my folks at a 75% payroll level, even though they're not working, and so they can be qualified. Is he in the right place at this point? And Ryan, what do you think?
I believe so. I mean, I believe that's the intent of this, is essentially for payroll protection to get people hired back. And so I think what he's referring to is looking at the 75% to look at maybe maximizing what he can spend on non-payroll. I'm just insinuating that. So I think he's on the right page.
Okay. I have a question from Jennifer Bell, who asks, is there any information in the regarding the Child Care Development Grant in the CARES Act available for child care providers, including application and guidelines? Have you guys seen anything about that?
I haven't specifically. We have a team of which I'm on. There's 4 of us that have read through and synthesized the 880 pages. So, Chris, let me put a flag in that, and I'll respond to you with some information. I need to talk to the right teammate who reviewed that part of the legislation, and I'll get back to you.
Great. Another question is paycheck forgiveness only for full-time employees?
No, it's for all employees, part-time, full-time, 1099.
Got it. Beautiful. Cool. All right. I think I'm getting down to the last of the open questions here. Chris Burke asks a question. He says, I've read that the independent contractors to whom we issue a 1099 can be included as part of the payroll. Is that true? If so, should we include all 1099 payments we've made both to individuals and LLCs?
We believe yes.
Does everybody believe that? Or
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Chris, it looks like you're on the right track on that. And it appears that everybody's agreeing on that one. All right. I'm going to still see. I've got a few more minutes. I'm going to keep going if you guys don't mind. Let's see. So Laurel asked, what if you hire the employees back and still aren't able to open and have to lay them off again before June 30th?
Well, the answer would be that the portion of payroll that you pay them during the 60 days would count toward the amount that could be forgiven.
Yes, and I would just add to that, specifically, I have businesses that are completely shut down, right? Especially in the bar business. And I am dealing with that same question, Laurel, now of bringing back my employees and not knowing whether the governmental authority regarding operation is going to change within that time frame. So what I am doing is ultimately telling my employees, here's what the plan is, and I'm bringing you back and we're getting you money in your hand now. However, as we track this, and as you've seen, it has changed minute to minute, day to day, that we might ultimately have to lay off our employees again. But to really be prepared, and like I told my employees about a month ago, was start saving your money up, because we're not sure how long this is going to be. So I think get the relief while you can get it. And if ultimately that has not subsided in terms of the restrictions, then you might have to lay them off, but hopefully they're better off and have money in their pocket.
Yeah.
Okay, another great question.
I would, Chris, one thing that we probably haven't hit on enough on that issue is nobody believes this is the final bite at the apple, right? This situation, think about where the world was 3 weeks ago versus where we are today, and who knows what's going to be 3 weeks from now. All points I'm hearing are that Congress is going to have several, perhaps 2 or 3 additional follow-on pieces of legislation to the CARES Act. So I think the answer there is let's see where we are, in April, end of April, beginning of May, because the world's continuing to evolve. But we do suspect that there will be additional federal legislation on this topic.
And I do think that, would add that I would imagine that if you've already been approved under the CARES Act, that would be an expedited way for them to, if they were to give additional relief, to process a payroll for people. I don't know that for sure, but I'm saying that is a possibility.
That's a great point. Okay, I'm going to ask another question here. How is the payroll determined for seasonal employees?
That's why they're asking you to provide 12 months of monthly payroll records, so you would capture the seasonality within your business over that 12-month period.
Perfect.
But if the 8 weeks following the funding happens to be the low ebb of your payroll cycle, your loan forgiveness may be less than your average payroll might have indicated. Is
correct. The other thing that we should point out to everyone, I don't know that we have, is the intention of the legislation as we understand it is to have all $349 billion deployed prior to June 30th. The expectation is all the money that they have allocated in this initial bill would be out on the street helping pay payroll by no later than June 30th.
Okay. Perfect. All right. I think I'm out of the questions in the Q&A, and I'm still trying to check our chat. Someone asked, we heard that the loan will be forgiven, but not the interest. What will the interest charges be?
Well, we initially thought it would be 4% interest, but now we saw yesterday that it's referenced at 0.5 or 0.5% of interest. So it's somewhere between 0.5 and 4%, and we're waiting to see the actual rules.
Hey, Marcus, I would just add to that. I just got something from our chief banking officer, and I'm sure folks within your organization have contact with Congress and the SBA. And my understanding is Congress is not happy with SBA for some of the rules that they issued yesterday, some of the interpretations, and that there's quite a bit of aggressive discussion going on about that right now.
Yep, Tim, again, that's why you and I were talking earlier about this 0.5 may be only for the amount of the loan that isn't forgiven, and the 4% would be for the amount that is forgiven, because the intention is that portion of the loan is going to get, quote unquote, paid back pretty quickly.
And I'm just going to make a point. I see there's a question regarding the SBA bridge loans and questions regarding not hearing back from the SBDC and not getting answers. I did get an update just this morning. I was talking to Mike Mydell up in Ellis County, and he was just saying that process, had hoped to be 3 days. Now it's looking at 10 days. So I think there is obviously a delay in processing. I think he mentioned earlier today that they're processing 10 times more loans amounts than they have done in previous years in a very consolidated time frame. So that's the newest information I have on the SBA loans.
Great. Thank you all. And we're about to wrap up, guys, but I have one more question and then I'm going to do some summary information. But Dr. Cole asked, what is the time period for the interest that you can pay using the PPP?
The 60 days.
Yeah, the 8 weeks. The legislation is very clear that about two things. One, you have to be any interest you pay has to be on a credit facility that was in existence as of February 15th. And then they make abundantly clear that no PPP funds can be used to fund principal, whether it's a prepayment or whether it's existing principal or normally occurring. So it's very clear about that.
Great.
And I just want to add, I did think I saw a question back up in the chat, just to touch on that. Well, I think someone asked whether they could prepay rent for the remainder of the year. And I think I've not seen that question, but I imagine that's the same answer, is that essentially you can't go ahead and prepay months or years worth of rent with these funds.
Correct. Yeah.
Just like you can't pay a year's worth of compensation in an 8-week period. Yeah. There's going to be some fences built around how the funds can be spent and still qualify for the forgiveness.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you all for that part of it. You can see, hey, panelists, first of all, thank you all for your help. But to our members who joined us, you can see how much information there is out there, how complicated it is, and how quick it is to change. We're going to do these on a regular basis for you. But what I also mentioned is, if you need specific help, and don't be afraid to ask, because that is what you're paying your membership dues for, is to ask us for help. Kim and our team are setting ourselves up to navigate you through this, using a lot of the resources of our membership to do so. So please, this is about a community helping a community. If you feel like you're overwhelmed and need help, that is what you are here for, and that is why we are here. So let's stick together on this. Before I let you go, though, we have had the governor, while we were on the call, clarify his new stay-at-home orders. And I've asked Matt Letley, our advocacy manager, who has just spoken with the governor's office, to give us a quick briefing on that, just so your businesses and your employees are aware of it. Matt, can you add to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, the order has come down, and it basically picks up the Miami-Dade order, which is very similar to Pinellas's order, except for one key provision, and that is that provision that allows non-essential retail to operate as long as they practice the 6-foot CDC guidelines. So, you know, there's a lot of provisions in there, but basically you can still go out and exercise in the park. No gatherings over 10 people in the park. You can, you know, go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy, go to the gas station, hardware store, those types of places. But the non-essential retail, you know, the Hobby Lobbies, the sporting goods stores, tobacco shop, you know, smoke shops, things like that. Those are going to have to close as of midnight tomorrow night. Are there any questions?
Matt, thank you for that. So we'll post that information. I'm sure you guys are going to see that in your email when you get out of this call. Again, I want to thank you all. We're right at our time, so I feel like we were expedient with your time. We appreciate your interest in what we're up to. We are seriously interested in making sure you're getting yourself everything you need to be a sustainable and resilient business for St. Pete. That is what the Chamber of Commerce wants to do for you. That's what our city wants to do for you, and we're working on it together. Please take us up on our offers to support you individually. We will be back next week with another chat. Courtney is also arranging for these smaller group sessions. If we want to put you in by industry or by size of business or by just issue you're dealing with, we're going to start working on that as well. So if we need to get some people on a call just to work on the application, we're going to do that. We're going to work together no matter what it takes. All right. So thank you all for joining us today. Courtney, well done on organizing this for us. To our panelists, thank you. To our members, hang tight, and please know that the Chamber of Commerce is here for you. Thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.